Welcome, everybody. The Smiling Zev Shalev from narrative.org. My name is Dean. DeanBlundell.substack.com is where you can find us. And it's all broken loose, sir. I mean, we leave for a couple of days. We have an enjoyable weekend, kind of take our foot off the gas. You think you can. And all of a sudden, boom, Donald Trump attacks Iran. He didn't wait. There was no 2 weeks. He covertly attacked Iran, made an absolute fucking mess out of the Middle East. We can get into the philosophy of the Iranian Muslim regime and the fact that the people there are living in a nightmare, and that there should be regime change. Da 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 da. But I mean, the escalation that we saw from Donald Trump this weekend and the attack on Iran and supposed nuclear facilities. We'll break some of that down. We'll talk a little bit about weapons of mass destruction. We'll talk a little bit about whether or not they are nuclear capable. We'll talk about new threats, homeland threats in the United States of America. We'll talk about the effect this is having on Ukraine and Russia. And there's my man, Zev, who runs a hell of a show. He's a producer. He's a producer's producer. So he gets to take the wheel from here on in. Zev, where do you want to start today? Because it's all about Iran.
Yeah, we're going to do 5 stories on Iran. It's a 5 stack on the Iran attack. That even rhymes. Who knew? Who knew? I'm a rhymer. What is that? Something like that. I got to say that I was busy this weekend covering this because it ruined my weekend. I was, who wants to stay up late covering all the stuff? But I had to because it is so, it defies rationality, this attack. It's beyond reason that he did this, not knowing, as everyone could have predicted, that this was going to be a tinderbox. I mean, basically, this was a trap that Donald Trump stepped into, and now we're seeing the repercussions. In just the last few hours, Iran fired multiple ballistic missiles at Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar in direct retaliation for Trump's nuclear facility strikes. But Qatar's air defenses successfully intercepted all incoming missiles, with 0 American casualties reported among the 10,000 U.S. troops stationed there. Now, that's because they told the Qataris this was coming. It was just one missile in one camp, and another also received a missile. Actually, in total, 6 to 14 ballistic missiles targeting CENTCOM's regional headquarters. But, it was a controlled retaliation. It was not a big attack on the U.S.
Yeah,
troops.
they warned Qatar.
Yeah. And they want Americans that it's coming. But what an unnecessary provocation. You've now got Iranians targeting U.S. bases in the Middle East, destabilizing the entire region. I'd like to get your thoughts about this because, we've got U.S. embassies now closing. There are emergency shelter in place orders for all Americans. The Iranian Revolutionary Guard is coordinated with Qatar hours in advance, but we have no idea what asymmetrical response is still to come. What we've had right now is a symmetrical response, but who knows what might be happening. These guys have a very, very deep, penetration into the American system, into America. They have cells that are terror cells. They have all sorts of things that they could do. Plus, their cyber threats are so developed, and their cyber capabilities are so developed. This is just the start of what could be a long retaliation against the United States.
Yeah, it could be one of two things, to your point. And I had a great time watching Lev Parnas and Malcolm Nance kind of wax about this about an hour and a half ago. Same with Steve Schmidt and Don Lemon. They kind of were differences of opinion, but effectively there are two, from what I understand from real experts, there are two possible outcomes here. One is, you pointed out, this escalates. Iran's been legitimately planning for this for 46 years, ever since they the U.S. helped with the last regime change. We know how that went in Iran. And they've been waiting to kill Americans for 46 years. Same with Israelis and Jews. They have been trying to kill Israelis, Jews, Americans, democracies, people who have free will and vote. They've been trying to kill those people that don't like the Islamic regime and don't like the radical Islamic regime and the Khomeini. Their job is to kill those people. They've been stockpiling weapons for 46 years. They've been building tunnels for 46 years. They've been building bunkers for 46 years. They've been infiltrating, different countries and diasporas all around the world for 46 years. So when we talk about whether or not that response from Iran was a paper tiger response, meaning, is that just a, hey, we need to save face with our people, let them know that we hit you really hard, and apparently I heard that they sent the exact same amount of missiles into this Air Force base in Qatar that the U.S. dropped on that Ford Row facility and a couple of other nuclear facilities.
Slightly
So
different sized bombs, I would imagine, but
yeah.
yes,
Yeah,
yes.
pretty did much different sized bombs. You're talking about the American military and the Iranian military, but the Iranian military is no slouch. I mean, they are well armed. They have lots of oil, and again, they've been preparing for this for 46 years. And I think a note that came out today, Tulsi Gabbard, who is this insane cult
Hey,
member of
Lev.
some Hawaiian cult. Hi, Lev. Nice to see you. Good to see you, Lev. Hawaiian cult. She put out a note today, and I thought it was really fascinating. Is this note that she put out effectively said, this is the summary of a threat to the United States. The ongoing Iran conflict is causing heightened threat environment in the United States. Low-level cyber attacks against U.S. networks by pro-Iranian hacktivists are likely. Cyber actors affiliated with the Iranian government may conduct attacks against U.S. networks. Iran has also a longstanding commitment to target U.S. government officials it views as responsible for the death of Iranian military commander killed in January 2020. That was Soleimani, if you remember that. The likelihood of violent extremists in the homeland independently mobilizing to violent response to the conflict would likely increase if the Iranian leadership issued a religious ruling calling for retaliatory violence against those targets in the homeland. Multiple recent homeland terrorist attacks have been motivated by anti-Semitic or anti-Israel sentiment. The ongoing anti-Israeli and anti-Israel Iran conflict could contribute to U.S. base of individuals plotting additional attacks. That is a warning to the American people that you should expect Iranian-backed terrorist attacks on your home soil in the United States of America. So there's your butterfly effect. On top of all of this, on top of everything that we've discussed, which is they attacked 3 bases today. The U.S. and Israel still beating the shit out of Iran. This is now escalating not just into words of rhetoric, but ballistic missiles raining down on 3 different air bases, U.S. air bases in the region, and there are dozens more. And if you don't think Iran isn't ready to attack those bases, if you think Iran is just like, we'll send a couple missiles, hopefully that ends this, and then we can all go back to being who we were. This is not going to end anytime soon.
It is not going to end anytime soon. And it's what's really interesting as well. The traditional alliances that the United States relies on in the Middle East, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Kuwait, Bahrain, they all condemned the U.S. nuclear strikes. So even though they're opposed to the Iranians, even they condemned the American strikes. And that's why today's retaliation is going to be viewed in a very different light. Normally, if Iran had attacked any of these American bases, they would have been universally condemned. They're not being universally condemned. Suddenly, it's justifiable for these American bases to be targeted by the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. This is an unthinkable turn of events for a bad expedition by Donald Trump pretending to be, a foreign policy expert, but actually sinking America into this quagmire that it could go on forever.
Yeah, and not in the traditional sense either, right? Like
Mm.
we know that now governments have the ability to reach into different countries through your phone and basically take over your mind, take your money, take your house, make your life miserable, blah, 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 blah. And again, 46 years is a long time to be planning your retribution against America, right? So, what is next? Where will this fight be fought? Where will this war be fought? We know it's being fought in Iran and in Israel. I mean, the scenes that are coming out of Israel today are devastating. Iran hit a hospital the other day, and you can say what you want about false equivalence because of what Netanyahu's done in Gaza to hospitals and schools, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I'm talking about it from a point of escalation. Again, this isn't just drop bombs and hope for the best. This is we're going to cripple your ability to send money. We're going to stop you from being able to access your electrical grid. And by the way, it works both ways.
Mhm.
Right. If you don't think that there are certain countries in this world that don't have the ability to target, the U.S. Electrical infrastructure grid, you're crazy. If you don't think that there aren't sleeper cells in the United States of America, not just Iranian, but any ally of the Iranian people that are thirsty for some kind of retribution after watching Donald Trump, the no wars president, who, by the way, should go to fucking jail for how he's conducted this, how he has just unilaterally decided he's going to do what's in his PR best interest so that he can distract Americans from what is the worst presidential sitting in the history of the United States of America, from his awful approval rating to mass protests with tens of millions of people. There's a general strike planned on the 27th of this month as well in the United States of America. He's destroying the economy. He's being laughed at by world leaders. He couldn't make it through one day at the G7 without embarrassing himself, soiling his pants, and having to fucking fly home early. So, and not just that, the rumors of his physical and mental decline. What is a great way to distract everybody from the disaster, which is you, other than starting a war with a state that's easy to hate? It's easy to hate Iran. This is the Islamic regime. It's easy to get behind not allowing them to have nuclear weapons. It's easy to talk about regime change because we've been talking about it for 46 fucking years. Every single time there's some kind of revolution over a woman who got killed or beaten because she wasn't wearing her hijab, it's this outcry, this outpouring of support from the free world going, my God, when will those people get a hold of their country? So there's a couple different philosophies and things going on here that sit outside the idea that Donald Trump is a fucking war criminal as I sit here, because the court of public opinion is telling him, I'm doing a good thing for the Jews. I'm doing a good thing for Christians. I'm doing a good thing for the region. And I look like a fucking tough guy. And nobody's going to look underneath the sheets. They'll just look at me like I'm the president that ended Iranian hostilities in Israel and around the world, which he never will. He never will.
Public opinion was definitely in favor of striking the nuclear facilities because it seems easy and it's why not do it? But no one is in favor of putting 40,000 U.S. troops in the line of fire, which is what's happening now. No one is in favor of the terror attacks that may be launched against America.
What do you think it's going to, like, if you're one of those maggots out there that's going, this, because it's fracturing MAGA, which whatever, who gives a shit? Half of MAGA is like, I voted for lower taxes, libertarian values, and no wars. I got none of that, and eggs are really fucking expensive. And on the other side, you got your Charlie Kirks and your, Engelbert Humperdinks and your cat turds going, we never wanted to invade Iran, but now that you're doing it, let's go get them. Let's go get them. And you're like, okay, well, what does go get them mean?
Yeah.
Right? You're going to go get them. There's no go get them.
Yeah.
Like, they're going to come for you. Mm-hmm. They're going to come here. They're a
major country with a lot of military resources that actually has, ability to fight this war and could fight a big war against America. And it's not something we needed to approach right now. But, there are Americans who are going to say, well, we started it, let's keep going. But the truth of it is, this is a fool's errand. And, the reason we have a president of the United States and the reason we surround him with a National Security Council and a State Department and all these other things is to stop him from making really stupid decisions. And this was a really stupid decision because anyone from a mile away could have seen that this is a trap. This was something designed to lure him in, lure America in for the precise reasons that you explained there. It's to damage America. It's to make Iran look like the victim. How can Iran be the victim in this matchup? And the aggressor is America. How do we land up in a situation where the free country of the world is the aggressor against this Iranian regime? And yet here we are, people are sympathetic to Iran. Even Iran's enemies in the Middle East are sympathetic to Iran because their sovereign territory was attacked. That's how sad the situation is. We've completely flipped the narrative, and we're hurting Americans, and we're hurting American bases. We're hurting American values. We're absolutely going to hurt Americans' ability to travel. Our national security, our homeland security has got to be ramped up to such an extent now that we're going to be so concerned about all these terror attacks. Why? For what reason? For dropping a bunch of bombs that didn't actually hit the targets?
Yeah.
I mean, it's beyond me.
Well, and that's the other thing, right? They talked about how Donald Trump in his press conference, we completely obliterated their nuclear facilities. And then 12 hours later, he's like, we did heavy damage. They're like, oh yeah, Americans did heavy damage. And now they're like, actually, not sure. Joint Chiefs guys like, not sure we actually got anything. And on top of it, because Trump was running his fucking mouth on Truth Social about possibly getting involved, they spent a week, Iranian officials spent a week moving something like 400 kilograms of enriched uranium out of all of those facilities into a secret underground bunker somewhere nobody knows him. So it was tactically, you could say it was a, and you give credit to the men and women in uniform doing something surgical and professional like they did. But again, this was so performative, they didn't get shit.
No, they
They
didn't. In
didn't they
fact,
didn't get rid of any centrifuges, they didn't get rid of any uranium, they didn't damage their ability to fucking make it. They have all kinds of, again, 46 years, all kinds of other facilities that they've taken all the uranium to, and now the race is on, Zev,
yeah,
right? Now the race is on because they're like, "We need the bomb."
yeah.
And there are
Oh,
a
yeah.
bunch of countries out there that are like, "So do we,"
And
in
we're
the
going to
face
help
of
you.
this aggression, and we're gonna help you
Yeah.
because you're gonna help us.
That is, in fact, the number four story. Let's stick to just tell people where they are. What you just pointed out to about the uranium being moved, 408 kilograms of 60% enriched uranium, enough for 9 to 10 nuclear weapons that were able to be moved away from the actual facilities where the bunker busters hit. They were, smuggled away and are now sitting and available to the Iranians. So you've got satellite imagery that showed that there was unusual truck activity at the nuclear sites just preceding these particular strikes by the bunker busting bombs. So we know that they've taken the uranium away, they've got the centrifuges, and now they're capable of rebuilding their nuclear facilities, but they're doing it now outside of any international monitoring because they are now excluding themselves from any international monitoring. We will never know what's really going on inside Iran. And you can imagine within a year or two or far less, we will have a nuclear capable Iran on our hands thanks to Donald Trump's fiasco.
Mm. And there is the then what
Yeah.
answer, right?
Yeah.
Like, the people that, and the maggots and the people that are like, wipe them out, turn it into a fucking parking lot. Who cares about Iran? It's just a bunch of mountains. Fuck them. Let's get rid of them. USA, USA. Okay. Um, Now you've got a nuclear capable Iran.
Mm.
Now you have another generation of 20 million people that want to murder Americans that will be
Mm-hmm.
taught to all of those kids. Now you've got more retaliatory attacks. You can't control those. Now you're damaging all your relationships. And now you're talking about killing Americans,
Yeah.
like on their own soil. Tulsi Gabbard, warning today, terrorist attacks, uptick, watch out. Iranian sleeper cells all over the place. We might be fucked. Like, that's the now what that nobody thinks when they drag their balls out of their pants and they put them on the table and they say, we're the toughest people on the block. I see it on Twitter all the time. You and the Canadian Army, whatever, we'll run over you. We'll just send in the National Guard from Virginia and we'll take you. It's like, nobody ever thinks what kind of damage you do when you get into wars like this, or the rhetoric becomes what it is, until someone calls you on it, until another country's like, fuck you. We saw that today for the first time. We saw a sovereign nation that was invaded by Israel, invaded and bombed by the United States of America. We're watching them punish Israel. We're watching them rain hellfire on 3 different American Air Force bases, once thought to be untouchable. Like, we're here.
It's a shot across the bow for sure. This was a very, careful, restrained attack. Obviously, they could have done a lot of damage if they wanted to. They could have not warned the Americans, but they did. They did this in a restrained way. But it makes them look like the responsible party in all of this, and it makes Donald Trump look like an irresponsible leader of America, which is again just flipping the script on this narrative, which shouldn't be happening. And in a number three story, which is aligned to all of this, all of it is landing up giving Vladimir Putin a $50 billion windfall, because all of this is increasing the prices of oil from 69 to 79. At one point today, it peaked at $81 per barrel. Now it's back down a little bit, but it's generating, that particular increase in oil pricings is generating him $42 to $50 billion annually, which you know what he will do with. He will fund his entire war against Ukraine using that $50 billion benefit that he's now getting of the increase in the oil prices. And that is why this is such a cynical thing. And I guarantee you that Putin and Trump, who seem to be having conversations, 5 times in the last month, what are they talking about? Of course, they're talking about this stuff. Of course, they're talking about what's the strategy to help Ukraine lose that war. Well, one of the things that Putin needs a lot of help with out of the G7 was the oil embargoes that they were putting up against Putin. They were banning the shadow fleet. They were doing all sorts of interesting stuff. Now, Donald Trump has given him a boon. Now he's giving him $50 billion in additional money for his war against Ukraine, for his war against NATO. And that is the most appalling thing about this. To me, when I look at it from a geopolitical perspective, Donald Trump is really helping Vladimir Putin. He left the G7 basically to go do his big thing. The big thing was to help Vladimir Putin.
After he pumped
Yeah,
Putin's tires, if you remember that correctly, where he opened up
yeah,
the G7. He's
yeah.
like, he should be here. I'd be mad if I was him too. Then he completely fucked it up and said Obama and Trudeau got rid of him, and if he was here, there wouldn't be any wars and blah 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 blah. And then he literally left like a lightning strike
Yeah.
the second that Zelensky got there. So yeah,
It wasn't about getting a ceasefire. Remember that Macron said, well, he's going to negotiate a ceasefire. He was not negotiating a ceasefire. He was negotiating an escalation in order to give Vladimir Putin and the Russians this oil price boon. And, as the Iranians are now threatening to shut the Straits of Hormuz, they're threatening to, really disrupt the amount of oil that can be distributed. Well, guess what that'll do? It'll keep the prices up, keep Vladimir Putin in business, really hurt the Ukrainian people and really hurt the Ukrainian effort, which is, on top of the fact that Ukrainians are being sidelined in the NATO summit this week. So, that's the real tragedy over here.
Yeah, there's lots here. We don't. What we see is not what's really happening. Usually, never is, right? And I was reminded. There's a saying someone said the other day, and I'm like, you're right. All the world is a stage. It's if you think about the war that we're watching and the beginnings of this war, or you think about Gaza and who this is helping, right? Is the visuals of dead kids, the visuals of aggressive behavior of other countries helps whoever's being attacked, right? In this case, diplomacy is a really important aspect to this war. You've watched Vladimir Putin look like a statesman, denouncing, what's going on in Iran, denouncing the escalation by the United States, because the free world is denouncing the same things, right? And so, not only is it good for his bottom line with the price of oil going up and a little nudge, nudge, wink, wink, but it's also good for his reputation right now. You've got a guy who's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And dude, and the hypocrisy is fucking dripping wet. Obviously, when he's like, that's a sovereign nation, you should stay away from Iran, leave them alone, do not escalate. And I'm like, what the fuck are you doing in Ukraine? You've been escalating and genociding people there for 3 years in a sovereign country. What the fuck are you doing? And everybody forgets that in the moment, right? They just look at a guy like Putin. They're like, well, he's finally talking sense, right? And he's not. He's not. This is a game. This is a chess match. It is their stage. And we're just bit players in it. We just get to watch this whole thing play out. But what is happening behind the scenes is not what you're seeing in real time.
The ultimate hypocrisy really came this weekend when at the St. Petersburg conference, the economic conference, Putin actually defended Israel, saying, well, we can't do anything against Israel because Israel is almost a Russian-speaking country because there are so many Soviet and Russian immigrants who live in Israel now, which is true. There's about 15% of the population in Israel is Russian. But the fact that he's using that as a reason not to attack a country, when in Ukraine he's using it as a reason to attack a country, is so hypocritical. But, that's Vladimir Putin, a master manipulator, and is able to, twist his words and twist whatever message he wants to fit any scenario that he wants. And that's why this is, not only hypocritical, but I really worry about the Ukrainian effort here. They're down a lot of artillery. They're not getting the support from the Americans. The Europeans are stepping in. But with all this distraction now, with everyone now focused on Iran and military bases are going to be under attack, people are not going to be paying attention to what's going on in Ukraine. And Vladimir Putin is going to seize the opportunity. He's been devastating Kyiv with another attack last night.
352 drones last night.
This is abnormal and horrific. And so people really need to pay attention to what's going on in Ukraine. Don't let this Iranian story sort of drown out everything that really matters in the war in Ukraine, because that's where Putin is looking to gain his advantage with this oil boost that he's getting as well.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, well said. No, I appreciate that. I think for a hot minute there, people thought, "Oh, no more Shahed drones." But no. They've been building those for a long time. I think they've even outsourced them to North Korea. Russia's outsourced them to North Korea. North Korea is now building them. So they at least have the foresight to be able to kind of, shore up their military supply line. But to your point, again, and I go back to this all the time, the unintended effects, the butterfly effect of having a complete kakistocracy run the United States of America, you're just starting to see it unfold. And if you're scared now, give it 2 weeks, give it a month, just wait.
Yeah, I mean, I think if I'm not mistaken, back in March there was a ceasefire negotiated between, Trump was negotiating that sort of ceasefire, and the big deal behind that ceasefire was to restrict Ukrainian attacks on Russian energy facilities. That was the big
Yeah,
outcome of that. So we see now that Trump is both protecting Russia's ability to mine oil, to refine oil, in
sell
addition
oil.
to sell oil. In addition to that, he seems to be providing them this big boost in pricing. It doesn't take a genius to figure this out. This really looks like Trump, the American president, is helping Russia in every way possible to fund its campaign against Ukraine. And he's been doing it for a long time. I think Zelensky called him out in a statement just the other day. But regardless of the fact that he's told the Ukrainians not to attack the Russian facilities, he has not told the Russians not to attack the Ukrainian facilities. That continues. So
Mhm.
we're seeing this ridiculous thing where America's president, the leader of the free world, is using America's military, which is not his own personal military. It's a military designed to help the American people fight wars and move America's national interests forward. He is out there using those facilities in order to help the Russians, which was our big fear about this presidency. So the Manchurian candidate will ultimately seize control of our military and our abilities and would land up helping our opponents achieve their geopolitical goals. And here we are. And it's why Congress needs to step in pretty aggressively here. This is not one of those things you can just, oh, well, let's see what happens. He is committing a crime against the American people. This is about as treasonous as you can get. You're aiding and abetting the enemy with your own army and your own military resources.
Yeah, and inaction can be seen as action. What you permit, you
Mm,
promote, right?
mm,
Restricting Ukraine's ability to strike targets deep in Russia, check.
mm.
Driving up the price of oil, check. What else? Blaming Ukraine for starting this war, check.
That
Um,
meeting at the Oval Office, I mean, that was
yeah,
just offensive. It was
yeah.
unbelievable
You
that
don't
the
have the
press found it.
cards. You're going to start
Yeah,
World War III. What does he
yeah,
do 2 months later? He starts World War III.
yeah.
This is like again. There's so many moving parts to this. You can't. You can almost set your clock to the idea that not only is a Manchurian candidate, he's actively working to
Yeah.
help Russia, and everything he does has a bent to help Russia. And I don't doubt for a second that those dozen or so phone calls he got from Putin and the Kremlin this week included, here's what you do next, here's what you do next, here's what you do next. I cannot, he is not smart enough to play 5D chess
No.
in a geopolitical game like we're watching today. He is taking orders from somebody else and he's doing somebody else's bidding and he's doing everything he can to remove Americans' interest in democracy, remove America's interest in fighting for the right thing by attacking people at home, by having a civil war against blue states and sanctuary cities, by going after the National Guard, sending the National Guard after his own people, sending Marines after his own people, arresting judges. I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on. This is pure destabilization of the United States of America. And this is a pure embracement of Vladimir Putin's Russia, fascism, and how Vladimir Putin wants this to work. I can guarantee you none of this shit. It's not coming from Pete Hegseth.
No.
It's not coming from the Joint Chiefs guy, Kane, Raising Kane. It ain't coming from fucking Tulsi Gabbard or John Ratcliffe. Like, it's not coming from fucking Steve Witkoff.
Maybe Witkoff through Putin. Maybe Putin's giving Witkoff the orders. But I'll tell you something else. This is like this notion. I know Jews are particularly stuck in this position where they're facing sort of these two terrible scenarios. They've got the Israelis pushing them into a war with Iran that most people don't think is advisable or worthwhile or for any good reason. But here they are wanting to support their Israeli nation. I've got family sitting in bomb shelters in Israel every couple of hours. It is horrific living in Israel right now. They are being rained upon all the time by missiles. Most of these bomb shelters are very tiny. You can't imagine how horrible it is. with your kids and your dog and your family all in a tight little space, having to every couple of hours. And there's no facilities in most of these things. If someone needs to go to the bathroom, they need to go to the bathroom. It's like this is not exactly lovely living for anybody. And Israelis are stuck in this horrible predicament where they've got a leader in Bibi Netanyahu who, like Donald Trump, has gone completely rogue, is doing things that is makes no sense in the world and certainly does not follow the rule of law. And it's all because these three guys, Trump, Putin, and Bibi Netanyahu, are in an alliance together. And that's the only way to possibly explain all of this, is that this is the result of the enemies of democracy, this union of these strongmen leaders and the other networks that have combined forces in order to really change the world by, the hell bent on changing the world to make it look in whatever they want it to look like. That's why they cleared out Gaza. That's why they're doing what they're doing in Ukraine. They're just giving themselves permission to do it. But Jews who are stuck here thinking, well, how can I not support Israel? If I don't support Israel, if I don't support Trump, I'm not supporting Israel. That is not the case. At the end of the day, when you look at this destabilization that's about to happen, and you look at the incredible buildup of resentment towards Israel, towards Jews, towards America that's going to be building up in the Middle East, which has for years, not been that bad. But now with this attack on a sovereign country, that's going to be boosted up even more. And you're going to have this renewed sort of fervor against Americans and Israelis. We can't have that. We can't have that in the world. So Jews who think that they somehow need to support Donald Trump because it's supportive of Israel, you're misguided. It actually, at the end of the day, is going to really, really hurt Israelis, and it's really going to hurt Americans and our reputation around the world.
Well said. I shudder to think. I think, watching a lot of the anti-Semitic, specifically here in Canada. I've got lots of friends that are Jewish. I've been part of some think tanks of groups of guys that are trying to stop anti-Semitism, and I'm talking about the kind that kids get harassed on the way to school. Synagogues get shot up, schools get shot up, lit on fire, graffiti. Jewish people being attacked on their way to and from work, having to hire private security here. Some of my friends have had to do that. And you talk to any one of those guys, and they'll tell you the same thing: is that we believe in a two-state solution. We believe that Palestinians should be allowed to live in peace. We also believe that Hamas should be wiped off the face of the earth. We also believe, and I've got some friends that are strong Netanyahu supporters, but not right now. Yeah, they're Zionists, but not right now. And I mean, I don't mean Zionists in the bad term. I mean Zionists in the term that you're proud to be from the state of Israel. You're an Israeli person first. I'm a Canadian first, even though I wasn't born here. I was born in England, so I'm a Canadianist, I guess. I think that I would fight for my country and I would die for my country because I love my country. I love it here. So, there are different aspects to the reputational damage that have been done to people who hail from Israel, people of Jewish descent. The murder of a couple of diplomats in Washington, if you remember that a couple of weeks ago. Some psycho was like, hey, free Palestine. And Netanyahu's not doing any of those people any favors at the moment, like no favors. But part of this, and you pointed it out, war is fought on two fronts, optically and physically. The optics here, because of what they have done in Gaza, are terrible. Like absolutely awful. The rubble, the damage, the death, the destruction, all that stuff. They lost that optic war after October 17th. They lost it. Now they're losing the optic war, and they've dragged America into that optic war with them. And all that is going to create is bad will for a lot of people around the world. It's going to create bad will for people who don't like wars. It's going to create bad will for people that are suspicious of Netanyahu, and they're going to transfer that bad will to Jewish people. And the same thing's going to happen with the Americans. Americans largely shared a pretty good reputation unless you traveled. If you travel with an American flag on your backpack, you swapped it out pretty quick over the past 40, 50 years. A lot of Americans used to travel with a Canadian flag on their backpack, as a matter of fact. But they don't have a sterling reputation at the moment, and Donald Trump has downloaded that to them too. So to your point, weary Israelis, not even if you're in Israel, just Jewish people who are so exhausted, Americans who are so exhausted by the capture of their reputation the destruction of their reputation? Because they're both being run by fascist leaders. The United States and Israel, both of them being
Yeah.
run by fascist leaders at this point that completely misrepresent the people that put them in office. And they've managed to hang on to power through all kinds of skeevy means
Mm.
over the past 10, 20, 30 years. So, you bring up some really good points, is that there is going to be some real nuanced fallout when it comes to how certain people, Americans and Israelis, Jewish people, are treated. And that's the real shame in all this, right?
I think it's so well said, and thank you for saying it, because it's absolutely true that these people in Israel, a vast majority of them, I believe, and certainly the vast majority of people in America have been captured by governments that shouldn't even be in power anymore, by fascist leaders that have combined their forces with other fascist leaders, with other autocratic countries against their actual constitutions. And what they're
Didn't
doing
Bibi's
is,
wife she was found guilty of fraud and embezzlement?
yeah, and he is guilty, and he's still on charges for a lot of corruption. He's just as corrupt, if not more corrupt, than Donald Trump. I mean, just can't believe these guys. And they both have very close relationships with Vladimir Putin, who is the power behind all of this, probably with China backing him. But Bibi Netanyahu still has a hotline that is direct to Putin from his home, and it's untraceable, and the United States can't get into that phone line. And you can be guaranteed that the amount of conversations they're having to coordinate all this activity is quite fierce, because we know that there was a Iranian facility that was staffed by Russian scientists. They didn't hit that one. They avoided that one. Why did they avoid that one? Because Vladimir Putin asked them not to avoid that one. Well, if that's the case, obviously there was a lot of coordination beforehand to determine which bases they were going to hit, how they were going to hit them, and what the reaction was going to be. So, Putin's in all of this. Bibi's in all of this, and Trump's in all of this, because Trump has been talking to Putin as well almost every other day in the last month.
If that's true,
It's
right?
true.
Well, no, and I believe it is.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you feel if you're Iran today? Like, if Putin's just using you as cannon fodder, and he's like, yeah, go ahead and hammer whatever target you want, but just don't hammer this target over here, which is where
I
my
mean, they
guys
could be
are.
in on it, I mean, really, there's no reason why Iran couldn't be in on this, because they got all their nukes out, they got the uranium out, they got all these bombs were dropped on basically empty facilities, as if America did not know that. Of course, Donald Trump had intelligence knowing that the stuff had been moved out. There's satellite photography showing that the stuff was being moved out. Everybody is probably in on it, except, the poor American soldiers who are sitting now in harm's way, and the American people and America's Congress, which has been left in the dark and excluded from me being part of this. This is all theater to some extent, but it's theater that it makes America look so so corrupt and so in the wrong hands and so on the wrong side of values and the wrong side of history. And that means that America is a fair target for the rest of the world, because it makes stupid decisions under Donald Trump. And that's the problem with all of this. It's not just his stupidity, it's America's stupidity that's being projected around the world, no matter how the American people feel about it.
Yeah, but listen, I go back to this all the time, and I see it a lot. There's a little girl that had a picture. She made a little kind of a sign for one of the protests last week. It's like, we're sorry, dear world, we're sorry, we're scared too. We're trying to get him out of power. Signed the majority of Americans.
Yeah.
You voted for him.
Yeah.
I mean, he told you he was going to do all this. He's doing all this. I mean, he's a sycophantic, lying piece of shit. He's a felon. He's a rapist. He's a sexual abuser. He's pure trash. He's a pure con man who surrounded himself with other trash and other con men. Like, the visual of him standing in front of the stump, announcing what he had done, with J.D. Vance, an author that admitted to fucking couches on his right. On his left, a human trafficker named Marco Rubio, whose parents were migrants. And next to him, a drunk weekend Fox announcer talking about how we just started a war.
Yeah.
And then you had J.D. Vance do a news presser, and they're like, hey, Mr. Vance, Vice President Vance, just a quick question. A couple weeks ago, Tulsi Gabbard, your entire intelligence apparatus said in no way was Iran close to obtaining a nuclear weapon, in no way. And they're not a threat or a danger to Americans. This was in Congress. This is like
they're negotiating in good faith with America, a deal that could have resolved all this entire thing.
And then so J.D. Vance, they're like, what about that? And he's like, well, there's intelligence and then there's our instincts. And I'm like, you wrote a fucking book. You wrote a book about humping couches and escaping your mother's fucking meth addiction. What instincts? What war instincts do you have? What war instincts does President Bone Spurs have? How about Marco fucking Rubio or Pete Hegseth, who hasn't been sober for 25 years? Hasn't served in a military uniform has been fired from every job he's ever had. You guys are the fucking brain trust. This is what makes it so scary for a lot of people. And I think with that picture, it dawned on me. I'm like, how completely incompetent America's
Oh, yeah.
leadership is. Not just
Completely.
incompetent, but dangerously incompetent, dangerously stupid, easily pliable, very malleable. Whatever P-tape is out there of Donald Trump doesn't matter, because all four of these jackoffs, all of them, they've got their eyes on a bigger prize, which is being part of some multipolar movement, which is, being the guy that ordered the strike. It's being somebody. And they're useless. They're useless in real life. And they're managing a fucking war with Iran, something that's the free world has tried to put a fucking top on that powder keg for almost 50 years. And they're like, let's fucking go for it.
It's absolutely clear to me that Putin is running that entire operation. These guys are just puppets for Vladimir Putin. And, they're framing this as about being, saving these Israeli people and saving the American people from the Iranian, terrorist state or whatever it is that they're framing it as, or nuclear danger. Well, they've just accelerated the nuclear danger. They've just accelerated the terrorism. So that can't be a good reason to have gone into this. And they're not helping the Israelis at all, because now they'll just, make the situation far worse in the Middle East. Yeah. Vladimir Putin has basically seized control of every aspect of the executive branch of America. And he is now conducting operations that are detrimental to America's national security and in favor of his own national security. And this is a devastating blow to democracies around the world, or anyone who believes in freedom around the world. Because what this will do is help him fund the continued invasion of Ukraine and help him fund the continued invasion of NATO countries along the Baltic states. This is where we're heading, and America is helping. So I don't know, AOC said the other day she believed this was a reason for impeachment. This is absolutely a reason for impeachment. He lied to the American people when he said this was about Israel and this was about nuclear capability, because it clearly wasn't. It was about helping Vladimir Putin. And this is what we're getting now, is a helping of Vladimir Putin. So if that isn't grounds for impeachment, then nothing is grounds for impeachment, because what worse thing can you do than help your enemy achieve its goals using your own military and, put your entire country at risk and your entire military at risk?
Yeah.
I mean, surely that is about impeachable offenses you can get.
Now, that's pretty impeachable. Like, it's pretty treasonous. It's pretty fucking traitorous shit.
It is treasonous.
Like, all of it. Yeah. Yeah. It's sedition. Mm. It is treason of the fucking highest order.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that is the definition of treason, aiding and abetting your enemy. So I don't think America can be communicated this, because the national media is still talking about whether Iran has nuclear capability or not.
Well, and keep in mind too, and everybody, like, I think it's really important. Keep in mind, nobody here, like Zev and I, we're not dancing around the idea that the Iranian regime is a bunch of bad guys.
Oh yeah, they're terrible.
That need to be taken out. Like, we totally get it.
Yeah.
It's how and why and the lying and the co-opting of America's military as his own, and the lying about nuclear facilities, nuclear capabilities. It is the attacking a sovereign nation against the will and the rules of other sovereign nations in the area. It's starting a bigger fight, which this is going to be a bigger fight that hurts Americans. This, in no way is this making Americans safer. Now, that note from Tulsi Gabbard warning Americans there are going to be terrorist attacks from Iranian sleeper cells, cyber and physical, that came out 2 hours ago. That's not. You're not making America safe again. No. You're not making America great again. You just opened America up to the idea that game on, right? Salman Rushdie wrote a book called The Satanic Verses 40 years ago. Do you remember this book?
Yeah, of course. Big book.
And the Ayatollah at the time, it's like, we're going to put a hit out on him, former Muslim, former Iranian. We want him dead. Well, 40 years go by, and he got attacked with a knife on stage in New York about 4 years ago. Yeah. Took out his eye, almost killed him. stabbed like 24 times. The guy screaming Aloha Akbar the entire time. They don't forget. This is my
No,
point.
they're sitting there waiting for this. They're paid by Iran. There are lots of Iranians in America. We have no idea how many of them might be affiliated with the Iranian state. We just don't know how quickly those cells can be started up. And I think, you could assume they already have. The Iranians tried to assassinate Donald Trump on the campaign trail. So, it's not, well, that was claimed at least. And overall, the number one story we should get to
Yes.
is that this was a tactical victory, perhaps, for the Trump administration, but a strategic catastrophe. 7 B-2 bombers delivered flawless strikes, they said, destroying Iranian nuclear infrastructure, but they've accelerated the timeline to an Iranian bomb by strengthening the regime's resolve for nuclear weapons as existential defenses rather than negotiating leverage. So what we really are seeing here is the acceleration of an Iranian nuclear bomb. Within the next year or two, there are countries around the world right now, Medvedev of Russia already offering their support in helping Iran build a nuclear bomb, specifically because America attacked the country and attacked those nuclear facilities. You've got regional allies like Saudi Arabia and the UAE are condemning the American intervention. They're actually on Iran's side. How can that even be after these guys have been at war for so long in that region? And what we're seeing is just an increase of potential risks to the United States, to the region, to the military that's stationed in the region. It's the most dire situation we've seen in that Middle East for a very, very long time. And, Pentagon officials can stand up there and look at nice boards and release videos of saying, hey, look at how successful we were at striking things. They struck only the physical locations. They did not actually deliver a awful strike that eliminated the nuclear threat from Iran. And this is where we're at. This has been a catastrophe for the Donald Trump presidency, an absolute waste of money and an absolute embarrassment in the face of the world.
Polymarket has the odds of Iran acquiring a nuclear bomb at 15%. It was like 2% yesterday. 2%. To your point,
Yeah.
this is a nuclear sprint at this point. This is uh, a game changer for the people of Iran. I can only kind of, and I saw it on 9/11. You see an entire country come together. You put down your ideologies. Everybody bands together. You come together for the good of the country and the people. Same thing here when Donald Trump won. Pierre Poilievre almost won. He says he's going to annex Canada. Canada comes together for the good of the people. Everything changed, right? Every aspect, every measurement system you have of what's important to you changes. And so you had a bunch of people go, okay, we just can't vote for that guy here in Canada. We got to vote for that guy because we don't want that guy to take over this country because we love it here. That's what's going on in Iran right now. Is there are it's split down the middle. You've got a real movement of younger people that want a democratic country, but then you have a movement of hardliners and Muslim extremists that don't want regime change, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So when you think about the way that Iran is, you think about where it is, and you consider the fact that they're getting outside help and have been, again, planning this for 50 years. There is no way they didn't have contingency plans when it came to the increased rhetoric. There's no way they didn't know days in advance, we need to move 408 kilograms of 60% enriched uranium, which they did. There is no way that their resolve isn't 10 times what it was prior to these bombings. They're all going to band together, specifically the hardliners, and they're going to say, they're attacking us. We need to get busy. And then you're going to see a bunch of neighbor states that fucking hate the United States of America go, we're in too. Again, the butterfly effect that we don't realize because you've got the dumbest fucking people in America running the United States.
And on top of that, if you think this is going to hit Americans directly, you're mistaken. As these oil prices keep climbing, inflation is going to climb because guess what? That's the biggest driver of inflation. So now we're seeing, 20% increase in oil prices. That's going to keep happening. And America under enormous strain already because of the tariffs, because of the disruption of supply chain. You're now going to have an increased chance of more inflation because of these strikes against Iran, because it's pushed oil prices up. And, this is going to be, the great economic leader of Donald Trump, who's going to save America's economy and, build another great economy. He's just tanking the thing. He's just tanking Americans' prosperity, tanking America's ability to fight inflation. And at the end of the day, with tariffs and inflation, it's a recipe for complete disaster, for complete collapse of the American economy, potentially the US dollar. And that's not even a dire worst case scenario outlook. That's just sort of an outlook.
That's just like, hey, these are the natural
Yeah,
consequences of
yeah,
what's happening in your
yeah,
country. It's not like this is the worst possible case scenario, because
yeah,
the worst case scenario for Donald Trump is a significant depression in the United
yeah.
States of America, a very deep recession at the very least, which apparently is coming. The sad part is that you can see him do all this illegal shit over the past 4 or 5 months, right?
Mhm.
Watch him collect bank in the Middle East. You watch him, pardon 1,600 J6ers, violent assholes. You watch him pardon, guys like Charles Kushner and other violent assholes, because then he'll get their money, because that's part of the deal. If I pardon you, you're going to give me X amount of dollars. You're like, yeah, no problem. Now Charles Kushner is the fucking ambassador to France, of all things, which is absolutely crazy. If you know anything about Charles Kushner, this is Jared's dad, who set his
Yeah,
brother up with a hooker, recorded the whole thing so that he could bribe him. No word of a lie. So you've got like all of the terrible people doing all of the worst things,
yeah,
and it's a collecting pot. MAGA's a collecting pot for assholes. It's a collecting pot for criminals. It's a collecting pot for rapists. It's almost like this little cabal of the worst people in the world who have tagged on to the worst person in the world that is justified. And this is why so many stupid people like him. Like it's true. There's a study that was put out that talked about who the dumbest people in the world are, and it's a Trump voter who believes in conspiracy theories. We talked about stupidity legitimately being the number one pandemic
mm,
in North America right now, because those stupid people have the nuclear football and they
yeah.
have support from millions of other stupid people.
Do you know what Donald Trump did today? I'll tell you what he did today. Trump Media, his company that owns the Truth Social group, authorized a 400 million stock buyback program as of Monday. That's because they're flush with $3 billion in cash, giving it flexibility to return money to shareholders while pursuing strategic opportunities. Meaning he cashed in today. He cashed in $400 million in his stock buyback program that he got from, I don't know, maybe the Chinese, maybe the Russians, who knows who's feeding him the money. But that company is not worth $3 billion, no matter what you tell me.
You tell me
Um,
280,000 members of
yeah,
that stupid fucking website somehow worth
yeah,
$3 billion, and he said he wouldn't take his money out ever. He was going to be in it for a long haul. Remember
yeah,
that? Today
yeah.
he cashed in. That's
Well,
nice.
he's buying back some stocks, so it'll at the end of the day be able to cash out all this money. But right now he's just putting it in his company's back pocket. The result of this is basically, why is he conducting foreign policy on Truth Social? Now you know why he's conducting foreign policy on Truth Social, because ka-ching, ka-ching, he gets the money on the other side. That is the five stack for today. Crazy
Hopefully
hour.
everybody's encouraged.
Hey, if you're the president of the United States, you can make a lot of money by selling your country out.
Yeah,
That's
you
that's
can.
true. So there's always hope for somebody. In this case, there's hope for Donald Trump. Sadly, as that may be. This is a pretty cynical show we're having, but people hang on in there. There's still a lot of fight to come. The truth is important. Make sure you share it. Make sure you check out deanblundell.substack.com for excellent coverage and analysis of all these things. You can also check out narrative.org. I've been publishing a lot in the last couple of days. So check out all my stuff on Iran, including a deep analysis for our paid consumers or paid subscribers about whether the strike was successful or not, and how we know that it really wasn't strategically successful. So that's all at narrative.org. We'll see you again tomorrow, Dean, for another jam-packed hour of the Five Stack.
Have a great Monday, everybody. Thanks for spending time with us. We can never thank you enough for giving us your time, giving us your energy, giving us your follows and subscriptions. Canadians and Americans need to band together right now, and we're with you, America. We're not with your president. I say that all the time, but we're with Americans. Love you. Have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow right here on the Five Stack.
Bye.